Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now, welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener. Your host, Ken Lain, here every week talking about the landscapes of northern Arizona. And we're in the holidays, kind of a slower time in the garden, or less stressful, less time sensitive gardening now, but still plenty of gardening. Cleanups in our house. So planted 3 trees this week. So some things have been going, lots of evergreens. So some Arizona cypress, things I want to screen. It's time to look at and kind of clean up and then open up and then add to the landscape. And I thought I'd share just one thing that I find the secret to winter planting. This time you can plant in northern Arizona whenever the ground is not frozen, which is pretty much all the time. And so most of the folks in, let's say, colder areas, let's say Durango and further north, the Midwest, the ground freezes and you can't get a pick through that ice. Well, we don't have that. I think our ground froze. I think it was real cold the day of or the day before Christmas. And there was maybe a quarter inch. I doubt that much. I've had a little bit of the pond is frozen over once. And so and then it just quickly thawed. And so it's just we don't have that crazy cold that a lot of places have, which means if you can get a hole in the ground, if you can get a shovel in the ground, you can plant. And the plants like it. It's fine. They would rather be in the ground at your house than in the container here at the garden center. So the plants that we have now are kind of skewed towards more winter planting kind of things. That is a lot of evergreens, some grasses, some herbs, some things that they look good this time of year. Now we've got the sequence started. So the first shipment of fruit trees, shade trees, that kind of stuff are going to start the end of this month. So January, first part of February, it's like full on everything. Bring in the lilacs, bring in the forsythia, go, go, go. We have 2 acres of plants to fill up. And it takes a while. It's a dozen trucks or more. You don't just bombard the staff with that much plant material all at once. So it's a rhythm we have. But they're starting to come. The first crop of pansies, we've got them I think the week before Valentine's. So that first crop of winter blooming pansies. And so they're leafing out. They look pretty good, but they're not the size. Got a few more days to go, but we're pushing them. So we're thinking forward. The 2024 pottery is here. And so it's kind of fun to see the new styles. So things are starting to happen, but you have less time, time sensitive. Like you have to get your tomatoes in now or you won't have enough time. That's the gardening season. We don't have that. You've got until the end of March to finish your pruning. You can get your soil prep ready anytime this month. You're not planting until February. That's when the potatoes and the garlics and the radishes and the carrots and those things go in. The rhubarb, all those go in February. You've got time. So enjoy it. Sip another cup of tea. Bake some more cookies. That's winter for gardeners. But this year, this last week, I did some cleanup. Then we kind of got it going. Here's the insider tip. If you're going to plant now, it's fine. Go ahead. If you find the plant you want. So for me, it was an Atlas cedar. So down on the courthouse, the statehood tree is a blue Atlas cedar. I wanted one of those. I live in Prescott, Arizona. Why wouldn't I want a statehood tree in my backyard? If it's a big enough space, half-acre lot, I can easily accommodate that. So I planted one. And it'll block out some road noise and some homes over there. So it increases my view. It worked out. Here's the insider tip. Do all the regular stuff that you do. So you're going to dig the hole wide, not that deep. You're going to add some mulch to loosen up that soil, to keep it from compacting so the roots can get through it faster. Put a little fertilizer in it because I know my soil is terrible. I actually staked the trees, so I know it's going to blow and get some snow. I know that's going to happen. It'll keep them upright, keep them healthier. The real secret is water. Water is your friend in winter, especially for new plants. And it's one that you take for granted because you're indoors. You don't have this time burden. You're not out there with a hose every day. In fact, you probably disconnected them and you only put them on when you with a quick connect. You're putting the hose on when you need it, which is not that often. And so you forget to water things as much, especially new plants. And so I planted three trees, two 15-gallon Arizona cypress and a 5-gallon blue Atlas cedar, the statehood tree. So two of the holes had some moisture, wasn't gooey wet, wasn't muddy. But I could feel there was a little bit of moisture. That's good. Made the hole easier to dig. The other one where I put the Atlas cedar, bone dry. And that ground was hard. And so I was mesmerized with how much moisture, how much ran the hose out there. I was amazed how much water that soil or that planting hole would accommodate. I didn't think it would ever fill up. And so you had to hydrate the surrounding soil and the plant itself. Now, I did that really well once. I'm set for a couple of weeks. I don't have to think about it. It's enough. So they're not using a lot of moisture, but they are using, all evergreens use moisture, actually all plants. All living things use moisture, but in the garden with your plants, the deciduous things they use a little less. Your evergreens like red tip photinias, your euonymus, all your conifers, the blue Atlas cedar, Arizona cypress, they're using moisture. And if they have not had their roots rooted out for a couple of years, so the secret is 2 years, 2 growing seasons. If after they've been in for a couple growing seasons, the roots are now out into the surrounding soil, less pressure is on you. When they're brand new, you've got to be more accurate. You need to be more diligent. You need to put it on the calendar. I watered today. In 2 weeks, follow up again. And so that will keep them healthy. I find that folks, when they first plant let's say a new spruce tree, or you've got some beautiful pine trees here at the garden center. Plant a new one. They don't water it enough when they first put it in the ground. So they didn't hydrate that ground well enough when they first put it in. They were hydrating the plant, not the planting hole. You want that surrounding soil to be hydrated so that it doesn't wick away moisture from the plant you just put in the ground. If the ground's dry, which one of mine was just bone dry. A couple others, which were more of a slope, so the water kind of came towards those planting holes. Yeah, they had a little bit of moisture, not a lot. So they didn't require as much hydration right off the bat when I first put them in the ground. But what I do is I'll dig the hole, fill it halfway up with water, only to hydrate the surrounding soil. So the first bit of water is just for the soil around the plant. Then I'll pull the plant out of the bucket, put it in the ground, put my surrounding soil around it. Then I'll add some additional water to water that soil around that plant directly in the plant itself. So you're almost thinking twofold: water the soil around the plant, then water the plant. Now, every follow-up, I'm assuming that soil will stay hydrated because I put a lot of moisture into it. I'll follow up in a couple of weeks. I'm just mainly focused on the plant itself. So, and the soil just around the root of that plant. And when you do that, you have tremendous success next spring because the growth is going to be, it's going to take off with new growth. Oh my gosh, especially for evergreens, because evergreens really, you get one shot at this. They grow in the spring, and then they don't really grow anymore, especially for pine trees and spruce. Junipers a little bit, they put on more flush in the spring and just a little bit more later on, but spring is your time. This is why it's a good time to put those kinds of things in the ground. And the insider tip, again, I just shared it with you. Water is your friend when planting in the winter. So hydrate those things, put it on a clock, just put it on a calendar, put a Google timer, let Apple know, remind me in 2 weeks, water that new pine tree. I just put it in the yard. And it will be a game changer because you'll get better growth next year. Got a lot in store. So a lot of good tips this week. Lisa Lain's coming in with your garden questions right after this.
My living room feels so empty.
Now that the Christmas tree is gone, the house just seems so blah.
brighten it up with a big, bold, beautiful plant from Waters Garden Center.
Fill that cavernous space with tall tropicals, colossal cactus, and sizable succulents that bring the great outdoors indoors.
Make a gorgeous green space you can enjoy all year, not just for a season.
Unique, exclusive, one-of-a-kind houseplants found only at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And back in the studio is Lisa Waters Lain. She comes each week with your garden questions. Just what are people asking, commenting, coming in for? What are people talking about around the town about their gardens? So welcome back to the studio, Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah. So your holidays going okay?
Very good. So Christmas done and gone. I've even got it packed up and put away
Boy,
already.
you're fast. I'm telling you, Christmas Eve, she's ready to just almost go.
Well, we had it up early this year.
We did not.
We did. Yeah, we did. So anyways, I was ready to pack it away. And it felt good.
I'm proud of you.
Or
You didn't throw the poinsettias out the front door. You kept them for they're so beautiful.
They were gorgeous.
They're stunning. She brought in some new varieties, some new colors. You know, we own a garden center. We can have the latest, greatest, newest thing. It's just a shame to have it just destroyed in one night's cold.
Well, yeah, they just have held up so well. And you're right. They are very, very pretty. So I thought, okay, I'll leave them for a little while longer.
Till Valentine's.
We'll see if they make it that long. I don't know.
When they start dropping leaves, that's what bothers me too. I'd say throw them out. They start to whine and complain about the shorter days, or it got cold or too dry, or I don't know. Chuck them then, but they look so good now. Proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
What are people talking about? What's going on here that we're in between the holidays,
right?
And we're still drinking eggnog, and they're still gardening, or gardeners are always thinking gardening for some reason.
That is true. So first question is from Mark. He says, do I still need 2 deep waterings in a month?
So you should water, for those folks that are tuned in, you should be watering 2 times a month, a deep soak, especially those plants that are newer. If they're under 2 years old, you've got a newer property, you've got a brand new, let's say a living Christmas tree, you just put in the ground, you need to be watering that twice a month. A deep soak, like you would in June when it's 95 degrees out. Water it that much and then let it go for a couple of weeks. So it's easy to overdo it this time of year, but it's easier to underdo it because you're thinking, oh, they're cold, they're fine. Yeah. You know, and evergreens especially, they hold those needles until they are dead, and they turn like in a week. They go from green
people go, what happened?
To brown like that. Well, they died a month ago. They just you didn't know it yet. So hydration. If you're thirsty, it probably is too. And if you have to ask the question, go ahead. I would say a deep snow, like 6 inches or more, that's enough moisture. An inch of rain, that might be enough. And that's where you're seeing the ground saturate and starting to flow. So that dry creek in the backyard, you're seeing that start to run.
I would also say, if you really want to know, go out with a piece of rebar.
Well, there you go.
A long screwdriver, go poke around in that soil, and that'll help you too.
So you poke around, and if you can get the, let's say your biggest flathead screwdriver in your toolbox, I mean, not a skinny one, a fat, chubby one, or a small piece of rebar. If you can get that in the ground, it's moist. If you got like, oh my gosh, I can't get that in the ground, it's dry. So that's the secret.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is from Cheryl. She has a large peony in a pot. She wants to know if she can trim it back now. And if yes, do you cut it back down to the soil, or do you leave?
Yeah, good question. That's a good question. This is not just for containers. It's for any peony in the ground, in the garden, raised beds, wherever. So they've grown up. So you've got English peonies are good, knee high or taller. Your Ito peonies are hip high. They're up to, they're much bigger. And they're both treated the same way. So you're going to cut that back down to the ground and just as close as you can without nicking the islets that might be coming up. I haven't checked ours. So I still have ours up. It's on my to-do list. I'll get there eventually. There's no rush.
Right.
So I'd say by the end of February, you should be cutting back your perennials, including the peonies. So you're cutting those back to, I don't know, an inch or two to the ground, something like that. Now, peonies are very robust. They can go down to minus, I think, 40 or maybe minus 50 degrees. They don't mind the cold at all. And you'll find them start to emerge from the garden, from the soil, from that container, about, sometime after January. So February, sometime you'll start to see, islets are coming up. So gardeners go, spring's coming. I can't wait for that flower in April and May. So I'd say take your time, cut it back as close as you can, and watch for, are there islets coming out yet? And I don't know yet. But if you do, don't nick those, because that's this spring's growth. But if not, just cut it back. Doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt it to have it up, not going to hurt it to have it back. They just don't care, but they don't want it, all that extra brown growth. They want last year's growth shading this year's new spring growth. They want the sunshine. So probably if you start to cut it back, the ground will warm up and you'll start to see that growth happen a little sooner.
And water.
Good question. Yeah. Oh, and water your peonies. Don't let them go dry.
Yeah. All right. I think we got time for one more. This one is from Amanda. She is getting ready to, she's got a raised bed she put in last year. She's getting ready, wants to get them ready for the coming spring.
Yeah, easy.
The question is, besides mulch or soil, what else would you add into that bed?
So if it's a brand new bed, or older bed, what happens is in raised beds, because the space is so confined, it's only got this much soil. It can't reach out and go, this is kind of old soil. I need to root over there and pick up some more nutrients over there. It's confined. It's like a container garden. So you need to revitalize or refreshen that. And so for last year's raised beds that had plants in them, there's old roots. There's last year's plants. Pull those things out. Old roots in the ground rot, or they start to compost. They taint the soil and they keep other roots from growing in that space. That is not good when you're in a confined raised bed space. You want to get rid of those. So filter that out. And then plants use up the soil. And so you need to add some freshness to it. That's where your compost, we make a premium mulch. We compost it for a very long time. And we screen it down to 1/4 inch minus. It's very fine. So it looks like it's almost like coffee grounds. And the plants just respond to it as nutrients. Manure. This time of year, look, get some barnyard manure. We make a deodorized manure, so it's not gross. So it's like, I realize poop is bad, stinky, gooey, gross, but not ours. We compost it an extra long time, and then we cut it with some real fine, our mulch, and so it comes out deodorized. You can't even tell it's manure. You'll never see a poop nugget, a turd in there.
Too much.
Yeah, it's not gonna. That would be a good additive on top of there too. And then here's the insider tip. So our plants are grown in Water's potting soil. So potting soil is a grower's mix. That's our grower's mix. And so our tomatoes or cucumbers or flowers, they're started in this, whether it's a cutting or a seed, we start it in Water's potting soil. If you can have that top layer, let's say top 6 to 8 inches of your containers or raised beds, and you could put a few bags of Water's potting soil on, and you're planting directly into that, you are going to have tremendous success, because plants don't like to go through different soil types. They like the same. They like sameness. So if you can give it more of the same thing it's already grown in, it's going to just thrive, and you'll get bigger plants sooner, faster. Anyway, top layer, add some Water's potting. So other than that, you're ready to plant starting usually after Valentine's or so.
Your spring plants. Yeah.
Anyway, we are out of time.
Okay.
Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners. Be right back after this. As the days get longer and brighter, houseplants can struggle and scorch, but we have the solution.
At Waters, we've organized our houseplants from A to Z for the brightest of sunny locations, many even bloom.
With experts that know plants and how to make them grow.
Shipments of the freshest houseplants in town have just arrived from A to Z and ready for a bright new home.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
So I started out the show by just sharing I had put a few plants in the ground. So a couple 15-gallon Arizona cypress, a blue Atlas cedar, which is the statehood tree down on the Prescott Courthouse Square. Over 100 years ago, at our state's founding, we planted a pair of blue Atlas cedars there, and they're still there, and they're ancient. They're very tall. I think they're the second tallest tree on the Courthouse Square. The tallest tree by far, overshoots it by another 20, 30 feet, is a redwood, believe it or not. It's on the back side of the courthouse, closer to where the Chamber of Commerce is, where the old City Hall is over there. You'll see a very large redwood tree. Surprisingly enough, they do grow here. So I've got a weeping redwood in my backyard. Very rare plant, but I know the person that developed it. Friend said, "Hey, you want one?" I said, "I'd love that. It'd be great." It's just thrived. It's now probably 40 feet tall. It's huge. It's funky looking. It's Dr. Seuss looking, but conifers, we are surrounded by conifer forests or evergreen forests. So ponderosas, pinyon pines, lots of juniper varieties, Arizona cypress. These are all natives of ours. Colorado spruce up on the ridge lines, firs up on the ridge lines. They just love to grow here. And so they adapt well. And so I put a few more in. I thought I would share just, I've got some, I know I live up in the Prescott Heights, Prescott Lakes area. So I overlook the dells. So I can see granite dells from our decks and patios. And so up in that region, the soil is ridiculously hard. I mean, just crazy clay soil. I mean, like you jump, I'm a big man. So I'm well over 6 foot, well over 200 pounds. I'm jumping on a brand new razorback shovel, new blade. It's not dulled. I mean, and I'm going in like an inch. So I'm digging these holes an inch at a time, jumping on this thing. It's a workout. I don't have to get on the treadmill that morning because I'm jumping on this shovel, but I got the holes in. It worked out. Thought I'd share a couple insider tips. Just there's some tricks to digging a hole in very hard soil. Now I own a 35-pound jackhammer and a 70-pound. So we've done planting for years. I'm an old landscaper, so I'm used to it, but I don't like breaking out that heavy equipment. I have to drag an electrical cord. They're heavy as all get out. And then they beat the living daylights out of it. If I can, I would much rather just do it with a shovel. Maybe a pick. Maybe if I have to, a digging bar. If I can do it just with a pick or just a shovel, I'll do it that way because it's just easier than hauling all that stuff back there. Here's the insider tip. The mistake I find with rookie moves is you dig in your hole. It's going to be 3 times as wide, same depth. Okay, that's the basic parameter. We've got handouts on that. Every time you buy a tree or shrub, you get this handout on here's how you plant. Here's a stuff, but here they don't tell you how to dig the actual hole, physical hole. Now this is going to be for you folks that have been gardening for a lot of years. You've gardened in hardpan. You already know this, but this is for you. Maybe you folks maybe new to the area. So you tend to dig you're jumping on it. You get that first layer of soil, which is usually pretty easy. And then it gets harder from there. You're kind of going around the radius, digging your hole. That's not the way to dig in hard soil. So you don't dig from the outer edge and push in. So you're thinking that gets you a funnel shaped. And then you're having to break out the digging bar, the picks to get the side hole, expanded some. So it's easier. It makes sense. But what I do is I'll tend to dig. I don't know if I can explain this well enough. I'm going daisy wheel around the hole. So I'm doing from the outer edge. Once I define my hole, I'm now not, the blade is not pointing towards the inside or the middle of the hole. It's pointing towards the outer edges. So I'm right-handed. So the right-hand side of the shovel is facing the outside edge of that planting hole. Now I'm jumping on it and I get a much easier way to dig instead of a funnel, an actual planting hole with side walls without having to break the pick out so much. And it works really well, especially if there's no rocks. So one of these holes, man, I hit a boulder, not a boulder, maybe a toaster size rock. A boulder is like really big, but I could easily loosen it up, lift it out, get it out of the way. That was a pain. So I had to get the shovel to dig around it, trying to open this up. But once I got that rock out of there, I kept going with this daisy wheel, kind of like a spoke of a bike. I've got the shovel on each one of those spokes, and it makes the hole go deeper, easier, faster, more consistent without having to break out heavier equipment. It's so easy to go with that radius and have the shovel kind of scooch in and try to, with heavy soil, hard soil, it just wants to slide to the middle. So you end up with this cone-shaped hole. And you're, now, how am I going to dig the sides out? Think of a bicycle. Just bicycle spokes, and it just makes it easier for it to get down. I know this is super, super easy going, Ken, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I tuned into this. But if you don't have a lot of practice with it, kind of go, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. Well, they don't teach you. I can't ask the Google machine to tell me how to do that, but I can tune into the Mountain Gardener, and Ken will help you. So throughout the week, I'm here. I can help you with more. I've got the handout. We got more segments right after this, though. Don't go anywhere. Not everyone can grow wildflowers, but we'll make sure you're not one of them.
At Waters, we know which wildflowers sprout, thrive, and bloom with success.
We're wild about wildflowers with many of our own Arizona blends.
Like our Arizona native mix, butterfly and hummingbird mixes, and all are big, bold, and beautiful.
At Waters, we know wildflowers, and winter's a season to spread new seed.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And back in the studio, Lisa Lain. She comes back, well, not just once, but twice each show. So she comes in for her Q&A section. Then she comes into, she just agreed years and years and years and decades ago
I'm not that old.
to do this, to come in and just take a segment and give me a different perspective, give us, the listeners, a softer side of gardening.
Yes.
That's my gal. So Lisa, welcome back to the studio.
Thank you. Always
So
good.
what you've been thinking about garden wise? You got the whole house packed up.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about? Bringing more houseplants home or something, or more?
So I put Christmas away because I love Christmas, but there's a time. Got to put it away.
I love Christmas more.
So my thing of putting Christmas away always makes me want to move the furniture around in the house, or
I can see
I don't know,
that.
because it just gives you a fresh start.
Yeah.
Maybe New Year, fresh start. Do I move the sofa? So I kind of start playing with things. But yes, I realized I have room for at least 2 more house plants on this one table that we have by a window. So yes, I'm going to be.
I was going to ask,
new one.
Big ones or small ones?
Not
so
big. We don't have room for great big in our house because we have big furniture, but we have lots of shelves and spots to put houseplants on.
Yeah, it's perfect. So, well, it's beautiful. What you're doing. It looks fantastic. I like the way it's coming together. So the next year is just going to be fantastic.
Right. So I noticed, houseplant sales always seem to go up the first part of the year.
Yeah.
And that's because people like me, they rearrange, they remodel, the tree's gone. They're like, oh, it's kind of bare, or maybe I need something there. So it's always fun to go start thinking about houseplants, shopping houseplants. So I thought we would talk about a few things that you should probably think about before you start shopping. Okay.
Like which garden center to go to? Like Waters Garden Center? Okay. Figure their fans are tuned in for a reason.
Right. First one is light. Check if in the spot where you want to put this plant, is it a bright light? Is it a dark light? Is it right in front of a window? I mean, there's things to think about, the setting of where you're going to want to put this plant, because that makes a difference in the type of plant that you want to have in that environment.
Sure.
So if you have a really dark space, some bathrooms can be dark, hallways,
Back
guest
bedroom that
bedroom,
you
yeah.
forget about all the time.
Right. So if you have a spot that's a low light, pick a plant like a ZZ plant
Yeah.
or Sansevieria, Chinese evergreen. Those are all plants that don't mind. They're still going to grow and look nice, even if there's not a lot of light there. If you have a nice bright room, it gives you a lot of options. I always discourage people from putting a plant directly in front of a window, especially if there's sun coming through that
A
window.
south facing. So north is a little different than south facing. It's a little hotter.
Definitely. But if you're getting sun right through that window, it's very easy to burn your plant leaves. And then the other thing is the cold. Sometimes when we get this winter, if that plant is up against that window, you'll actually get cold damage. On that plant. So just kind of a few things to think about as far as where you want to place that plant in your home, because you want to pick the right one for the right environment. The other one is ease. How much of a houseplant guru are you?
I want them to be exotic and super easy.
That doesn't work that way. So I've gotten better with houseplants, but I started with ones that I knew were easy, that I knew how to take care of. Like I said before, ZZ plant. That one's terrific because you only water every 3 weeks.
When you remember.
Something like that, yeah. Sansevierias or mother-in-law tongue is another one that's very low water usage. Chinese evergreen. There's some that are just, you don't have to think about them a lot. And those are the ones that I like a lot. I've tried to branch out. I tried to get into some alocasias, zebra plant, things like that. And I've struggled a little bit with those. I'm still working with them.
You shouldn't travel so much. That's the problem. You're out of town for 2-3 weeks at a time.
They just tend to be a little more persnickety.
Yeah.
So if this is new to you, or you feel like you have brown thumbs, take the time and pick the right plant for you. Don't start with one that's going to takes a lot of your time and energy. Get one that you kind of just walk by and go, look how pretty that is. And don't overwater it, because that's certainly something.
That's one where it does pay if you're just starting out, especially, and it's just kind of hard. You go into the grocery store and you see this pretty plant, you go, oh, I want to buy that. Mm-hmm. And it's affordable, and you're on the shopping spree with your watermelon and your frozen pizza. This is if you're starting out, or you got a specific room that you've struggled with, or you're just not sure, come talk to professionals. This is where a garden center is here to help you. Mm-hmm. We've got a little bit bigger, healthier plant. So there's a transition between the farm to here. So there's a way to get it hardier in your house. And then which one do I go with? Well, tell us where you're at. Take a picture. Yeah. We'll tell you which one. This is a perfect spot for this. We're growing it here. So our radars are always up for where plants grow best.
Right.
We can help. We don't mind sharing that information with you.
Yeah, that was one of my other points.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Is get good information.
Yeah.
Because you're right. You can buy houseplants. Everybody and their dog has a houseplant. But you want to get one that's going to work for you, and you want good advice. Yeah. So many times, some plants like moisture, some don't. Your fertilizer makes a big difference in which fertilizer you're choosing, which potting soil, getting the right pot for your plant. And if you take the plant home and a few weeks down the road, something's going wrong with it, you want to be able to come back to a place and go, hey, what's going on with this plant? It's kind of got a weird look. And all of our people are excellent with houseplants. We can really offer advice, give good suggestions. So that's important as well. But that being said, new houseplants, we'll have our new shipment of houseplants in next week.
Okay.
So all kinds of cool new ones. Yeah. And think about houseplants. I guess it's like all of gardening. They're coming up with new varieties.
It's kind of fun. It's really fun.
The time, we're used to the pothos. I mean, who hasn't had a pothos at one point in their life? Every dorm room, I think, has a pothos. Yeah, that's right. Which is great because they're easy care plants to grow. But they're coming out with new varieties of pothos. My new favorite one is the neon pothos, just because it's just a really bright green
cheery
color.
Yeah.
And I love, in a house especially, it really gives you some added color into your home. The philodendrons have been around for eons, but they've come up with some really new cool ones where like the stems are a real dark red with the green leaves. They've got a neon philodendron. So it's just really cool, different colors that they're coming out with. So it's not just the same old pothos that your grandmother had.
Color is the thing.
Yeah.
Not white. So green looks really good with white, but if you've got color on your walls other than eggshell, yeah, probably the color, the lighter, the red stems, the neons, they really pop. They really look like designer-esque in a room that's it's got more new furniture or something. And you need something alive that just really brings it out and go, wow, I just want to read a book here. Watch the game here. This is great.
Right. Yeah, I love the new lighter colors. I love the variegated colors.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think those are really neat, attractive. And then speaking of colors, we also have a lot of new pottery in. So you can also get that beautiful new plant. You can put it in a beautiful new pot. We can actually pot for you. We do that for people at very minimal cost.
Yeah.
And we'll help you get the right size. Because what I find is a lot of people jump up in too big a size. And then they go, what's wrong with my plant? It's just kind of sitting there. Well, because you put it in that great big pot, it's rooting out.
Yeah.
It's forgetting that it has to grow up. It's just putting on roots. So we'll help you get the right size, the right soil. Get a moisture meter. Oh my goodness.
The easiest tool ever, cheapest, easiest tool at every house. If you have a house plant, you need one.
They take the guess out of it. When I water the houseplant room here at the store, I have a moisture meter in my pocket because soils can be deceiving. And what you think is wet is dry, and what you think is dry is wet.
Yeah.
So that moisture meter takes that guess out of it. So if you have a plant that like a spathiphyllum, peace lily, they like that moistness.
Yeah.
So you want to keep them a little more on the moist side as opposed to a ZZ or a Chinese evergreen that wants to be dry.
Yeah, boned.
So, it takes that guesswork out. So get the right tools, the right information, the right plants.
We are out of time, Lisa. Great advice. Thank you so much. That's super, super good insight. So Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners. Be right back after this.
My living room feels so empty.
Now that the Christmas tree is gone, the house just seems so blah.
Brighten it up with a big, bold, beautiful plant from Waters Garden Center.
Fill that cavernous space with tall tropicals, colossal cactus, and sizable succulents that bring the great outdoors indoors.
Make a gorgeous green space you can enjoy all year, not just for a season.
Unique, exclusive, one-of-a-kind houseplants found only at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
Now, for those of you that are tuned in to the Apple or Spotify podcast, this is video. You get the video presentation of this. So you're seeing me in my studio. Yeah, you see my office. And my office is at the garden center. And I'm overlooking some corrals. And I've got this beautiful layer of wildflowers outside my window. I look at, watch butterflies, hummingbirds. I've just cut those back. And so I'm getting them ready for spring. And now, if you see me looking off camera, I'm looking out my window in my office, and there's a pair, husband-wife team of roadrunners back there. They are loving that I cut back the wildflowers, and you can see them hunting back in between all the cuttings and stuff. I've got them up on the fence. I mean, it's fun to watch them. So roadrunners are a magical thing in Arizona. It's what we're kind of famous for. And they're pretty common. We see them all the time. You see roadrunners, especially up here, all the time. Gila monsters are the other ones. Scorpions we hear all the time. That's more of a desert thing. And who wants to see a scorpion? Come on. They're pretty cool. Horny toads. That's another one we're famous for. And we have a lot of those. Not as many as I'd like, because I like to grab those with the grandkids. They're always mesmerized going, oh, this funky little lizard, and you're willing to pick him up, let me pet him, turn him over, have him sleep while I rub his belly. We rented a house up in Durango last summer, and the horny toads were thick up there. The grandkids were in the hunt. Pop, there's another one over here. Get over here. Pick him up yourself, son. They're not going to bite you. So you kind of trade them. Anyway, Okay, where was I going? If you see me out looking off camera, because I'm looking at my pair of Roadrunners back there, so it's kind of fun. Preparing soil. I am getting my garden soils ready for next spring. So I'm actively putting manures, mulch, compost, some fertilizer on there. I'm getting the soil ready. And so the last year's vegetable gardens have been pulled out. They're just exposed. They've been out, well, for a month and a half, 2 months, for a long time. Now I'm getting the actual soils ready. And here's the ideal thing for you folks tuned in. If you're hardcore gardeners, is whether it's flowers or vegetables, if you've got raised beds or garden areas where you like to garden for those things, you need to think ahead about 6-8 weeks before you start planting, especially if you're going to add some real nutrients like manure. Manure is just such good stuff that for gardens. Plants just live on. They love that, but they tend to be hot, so they're very high in nitrogen. That's nitrogen. Remember, nitrogen, phosphorus, potash. That first number is nitrogen. That's what creates kind of new, luscious leaves, big, fast growth. Tomatoes love it. Corn needs it. Fast growing plants, dahlias will grow bigger, better, especially dinner plates. Your geraniums love manures in the gardens, but they don't like it right before I'm planting. You really do want to get this on now. Let it rest, settle. Put it on now, pray for snow. Let it just kind of even everything out, kind of get it all percolating in there. And you turn the soil over and then start planting just like that. And so I'm actively putting those things in. Here's what the book says. So you put a 3-inch layer of composted material on top of the garden soil, tilled down to 1 shovel's depth, or 1 rototiller, or however you're measuring, 1 disc if you're big gardens. But ideally, the plants used up that organic material you gave it last year. You're going to need to replenish that. And this is something that you're going to do every single winter. You need to add some freshness to that. Now, here's a mistake, a rookie move. I've made it myself when I was a new gardener. I see a lot of new folks coming in. The internet is crazy. I don't know why. Stop looking on that Google machine. It dumbfounds you, gets you the wrong information. They're telling you to add sticks, logs underneath your soil, add fresh leaves. Never add fresh, uncomposted material into your soil. It robs nitrogen from your plant's roots. It actually stunts the growth next spring. You only want to introduce composted material into your soil. Please, for the love of gardening, do not put fresh manure into your gardens. It's teeming with nasty stuff. And then it introduces grubs and all kinds of crazy wormy kind of things that eat the roots of your plants. Totally, I've seen so many mistakes. You want to compost these things first, off to the side, let it heat up, let it compost down. So compost pile will actually shrink as it composts. So the nutrients, kind of the humic acids and all the beneficial stuff that's there kind of increases as the mycorrhizal, the fungi break this material down. When it's down to its last core, you get like humic acid and nitrogens and phosphorus and all this rich stuff the plants love. You don't want to compost this stuff in the soil in your gardens directly, or it just totally messes up. It'll mess with you. You go, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. They grew so well last year. No, they're not growing. It's because the plants it's composting there in the ground. So I'm adding composted manure, about 1 inch, another inch, maybe 1.5 inches, another 1.5 inches of just water's premium mulch. I'm adding my own material. So if I know what's in it. I'm happy with it. It's all organic. I know what I'm introducing. And I know that it's going to grow. It's not going to keep breaking down. But I'm trying to put that kind of generous layer of manure on top of the soil so it has time to kind of percolate and mitigate some of the nitrogen. That way, when I start putting my potatoes in, when I start putting in those root crops, rhubarbs and radishes and onions and garlics, all the stuff you start real early in spring, it's not going to burn those. It's not going to taint them. And so start now. I'm also adding, while I'm doing that, I'm adding some fertilizer, especially phosphorus. So I'm adding superphosphate, 0,18,0. Usually I'm putting the fertilizer down first, then I've got a tomato and vegetable food, so I put that down, and then I'm putting my organic kind of composted material for the compost, the manures on top of that, and then I'm just letting it sit there. I'm gonna let it sit there for a month and a half, and then I'm gonna turn it under, usually at the beginning of February, somewhere in there. I got some time. I'll kind of turn it, kind of get it ready. And then usually by the end of February, I'm starting to plant. I mean, you can put lettuce, you can put spinach, you can put all those leafy broccoli, cauliflower, all those early spring things, especially at the Prescott layer and lower. You folks over in Cottonwood, Camp Verde, Sedona, you can probably cheat it even a little further. And so, but I'm thinking ahead. Always think a season ahead if you're revitalizing your containers. Really what I'm doing for me, I grow a lot of container things. So you really want some freshness in those containers. If you grew some big plants in that pot last year, I'm taking that top layer of potting soil. Is there, you're not adding manure into pots. That's just too rich. You want more potting soil in that. But I'm trying to add fresh potting soil. I'll take the first foot or so, 8 to 12 inch, and I'm taking that out and I'll add that to my raised beds, the big garden areas. So I'll just go, a little bit of that makes no real difference over there, but I need some fresh potting soil here. And then I'll take a bag of fresh Waters potting soil. That's our growers mix. And I'll top off that container. So I'm trying to transition the soils as I'm growing. So this year I'm growing it fresh in my containers, and next year I'll take that top layer, add it to my raised beds, or out there in the garden, landscape gardens out there, and then I'll add some freshness. And so then I'll add manures to my big raised beds, the bigger areas. And that seems to make a real difference. So if you struggled with consistency, they grew good this year, and the next year they didn't so much, it's probably because of the materials that you're adding into the soil. It's either detrimenting, it can hinder you, or it can really help. And so adding a 3-inch layer of organic matter and let it sit there for 6-8 weeks, and then go ahead and plant. It's going to be a game changer in your gardens. At least my name's Ken. We're just friends talking over the airwaves. It really works for me in my gardens. I think it will for you too. Be right back with more after this. Not everyone can grow wildflowers, but we'll make sure you're not one of them.
At Waters, we know which wildflowers sprout, thrive, and bloom with success.
We're wild about wildflowers with many of our own Arizona blends.
Like our Arizona native mix, butterfly and hummingbird mixes, and all are big, bold, and beautiful.
At Waters, we know wildflowers, and winter's a season to spread new seed.
Waters Garden Center, where people who love their flowers wild, they love to shop for seed.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
Now, I mentioned a couple times in the show that I've done some planting this week. So I've been cleaning up my landscapes, pruning things back, getting some old native stuff. Some of them just out of there. Some of these oaks are just, oh my gosh, they need to be trimmed back. They're like a weed. So some of my pinyon pines needed some help, some fertilizing, taking care of, pampering them, getting the dead wood out. So I've opened up some areas. And then I'm seeing that I need a few extra plants. So I've added a couple Arizona cypress and a blue Atlas cedar, which is the Arizona statehood tree down on the Prescott Courthouse. That's the original tree planted back over 100 years ago, the day of our founding. The state of Arizona, we, the citizens of Prescott, planted some ceremonial trees down there. Apropos, it's a beautiful area. It's the biggest trees on the front area where the statue of Bucky O'Neill, that front statue, it's just to the, as you're looking at the front courthouse, it's just the left. That's the stake hitcher. Plant one of those. And so with trees, this is a good time to put them in the ground. I had mentioned watering is a secret to healthy growth for next spring to keep them growing. So go ahead and plant. Just make sure you water them. You can't plant once and be done until you turn the irrigation back on in April. That's not, the plants are not going to thrive with that. They might live, but if you want to plant them and have them really exceed, kind of really grow out next spring, this is a great time to plant as long as you water them. The other insider tip, it seems counterintuitive, but you really do need to stake trees in winter. I don't care if it's a deciduous plant or an evergreen plant, you need to stake trees. Now, deciduous, those things that lose their leaves, you wouldn't think you need them, but they're going to eat along. They're going to take off with new growth next spring, and then they start catching the wind and they start to lean on you. You really need to stake. With evergreens, especially those fast growing, like Arizona cypress, it's one of the fastest growing evergreen trees. It grows 20, 25 feet tall, 12 or more feet wide. It's this beautiful, thick, fast growing, luscious evergreen tree. Well, when you put them in the ground, they're a little skinnier. You wouldn't think you'd need it. They're pretty heavy. They're standing up on their own by themselves. But what happens is the late spring snow is so heavy that it loads up on those branches and then it just kind of flops over. And so you don't want that to happen. It doesn't break the trunk typically, but it can disrupt new root growth. The plants are still budding. They're still pushing new roots out. So that top growth, you're seeing the bud swell right now on the top growth of, let's say, your apples or your pears or your cypress, I noticed that the aspens, they're swelling. They're actually actively growing. Slow, but they're growing. The same thing happens with your roots. You don't want that root ball to shift and discourage, break some of those, but just staking it. It's easier to stake now. Just tie it once at the top towards the middle, put a stake on either side of the root ball. Don't put a stake right next to the trunk. You want that tree to move, but not fall over. You want that tree to leaf out and be exposed to the wind, so become strong, but not lean to the northeast. So staking is critical, I think, for planting in the mountains where it's windy. For the mountains of Arizona, you need to stake trees, especially evergreens. I don't care what size. So my little tiny 5-gallon, I used a couple bamboo stakes. My big old 15-gallon Arizona cypress, they were beautiful, icy blues. I put a lodgepole on either side, took one tie to the trunk, and then tied it off to these trunks. And I'll take that off next year. Probably this time next year, I'll take it off. But for now, it looks healthy. That's how you stake a tree in your backyard. All right, Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners. Until next week.
My living room feels so empty.
Now that the Christmas tree is gone, the house just seems so blah.
Brighten it up with a big, bold, beautiful plant from Waters Garden Center.
Fill that cavernous space with tall tropicals, colossal cactus, and sizable succulents that bring the great outdoors indoors.
Make a gorgeous green space you can enjoy all year, not just for a season.
Unique, exclusive, one-of-a-kind houseplants found only at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com.